Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the first part of our kind of almost season review period on the channel, and we are starting off with our season ratings. So what we will be doing over the next 3 days is we will be splitting the grid into 3 tiers. So today we will be looking at Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. On Sunday, tomorrow, we will be looking at McLaren, Renault, Toro Rosso and Racing Point, and third and probably least, Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams seasons, and we will be giving the both drivers that drive for the team a rating out of 10 and also the team rating out of 10 as well. So as you can see, it's just me today. There is no Ash. There was an Ash. We recorded this video before, but the memory card blew up. Not sure how it happened, but basically we lost all the footage on that memory card, so I'm having to re-record this, and I will give you Ash's ratings as we go along. Obviously he won't be able to give his reasonings because he's not here. He will be back on Sunday and Monday to give his take on proceedings as well. So guys, we're going to go into our season ratings. Hope you enjoy this. We're going to start off with the big boys that are Mercedes, and what we will do is we will look at the driver who finished highest in the World Drivers' Championship first and then their teammate. So that means number 1, the man on top, that is Lewis Hamilton, and for me he scored a 10 out of 10 for his season, and Ash also a 10 out of 10. Lewis Hamilton has just had an absolutely superb season. He's been incredible in the way that he's just been so consistent. I think it's only 2 or 3 times that he finished off the podium all season, which is an incredible achievement, and that is why he's won the championship, and won the championship with more races to go and not the final race. I think he wrapped it up in the US Grand Prix, so with 2 races to go this year. Yes, he does have the best car, but he's earned that right, and yes, he drives everything about that car, and at times it hasn't been the best car. It has been behind the Ferrari, it has been behind the Red Bull. At certain stages, more in the kind of altitude affected races during the year, and he has still got solid performances and tends to maximise his results. 6-time world champion. Couldn't really think of anything to knock Lewis Hamilton, so that is why it is a 10 out of 10. Moving on to his teammate Valtteri Bottas, and for me Valtteri scores an 8 out of 10. For Ash, a 7 out of 10. Why I gave Valtteri Bottas an 8 out of 10 is because it is his best F1 season to date. He has scored 4 wins, which is more than he's ever done in an F1 season before. Finished second in the Drivers' Championship. Yes, obviously it was a lengthy way behind his teammate Lewis Hamilton, but at some stages it looked like he would be overtaken by other drivers, but he had a strong second half of the season and was able to score second in the Drivers' Championship and also play an integral part in Mercedes securing yet another Constructors' Championship. He can still improve, he is getting better, but for a guy who had struggled in 2018 and maybe arguably could have been dropped after 2018, 2019 was definitely a better and more positive season for Valtteri Bottas. Still needs work to go on, that's why it's an 8 out of 10, but yes, he's improved and I'm impressed with what I've seen from Valtteri this season. Moving on to Mercedes as a team as a whole, and for me they score 9 out of 10, and for Ash also a 9 out of 10. The reason I gave Mercedes a 9 out of 10 is because they just were almost perfect. Obviously Mercedes wrapped up the Constructors' title very early, but still there were mistakes. It wasn't the perfect season. Hockenheim in the 125th year anniversary of Mercedes in motorsports obviously was a race that they will be wanting to forget rather sharpish. Their strategy calls in Singapore and recently in Brazil as well have meant that it has been an almost perfect season, but not quite. So that's why they get a 9 out of 10 from me. They've been very, very good and they've smashed it again. But also, if your competitors like Ferrari and Red Bull had maybe performed a little bit more consistently and without the mistakes, it might have been a different story. but still a very impressive season and a 9 out of 10 for Mercedes. Moving on to the second team that we will discuss today, and the driver who finished top, 4th in the Constructors, was Charles Leclerc. His first season at Ferrari, and he gets an 8 out of 10 for me. He also gets an 8 out of 10 from Ashley. Charles Leclerc for me, mightily impressive season considering it's only his second year within Formula 1 and his first year with the high pressure environment that is Ferrari. He obviously got the most pole positions out of anyone on the grid this year, and that's not only impressive against teammate Sebastian Vettel, but is really impressive against the greatest pole setter of all time in Lewis Hamilton, record wise. Incredible performer on a Saturday, Lewis Hamilton. And yeah, Charles Leclerc was able to beat him in his first year at Ferrari, which was, yeah, mightily impressive from that. Obviously, he's disappointed that he wouldn't have been able to convert more of those to wins. But yes, still 7 pole positions is a fantastic effort. And again, going to those 2 wins, the most wins for the Ferrari out of the 2 drivers this season. And at Monza, in front of the Tifosi, with all that pressure, he was able to win for Ferrari for the first time since 2010 when Fernando Alonso won. Yeah, mightily impressive effort and a lot of pressure for the young man. Still showing signs of immaturity and naiveness in racing. Austria, obviously, he was shown the hard elbow by Max Verstappen and learnt and developed after that. And the way that he handled the Singapore and the Sochi incidents, for me, went down in my books. I know some people might have felt that it was just how he reacted. For me, yes, arguably so. But at the end of the day, you've just got to go out there and perform. And his performance was off Sebastian Vettel those days. And I would have preferred him to channel his energy and kind of, yeah, get past his teammate in that respect. But a still mightily impressive season for Charles Leclerc, 8 out of 10. And moving on to his teammate, that is Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time world champion, and a season that he surely will be wanting to put in the history books and not think too much about. It is a 7 out of 10 for me, and there's a bit of a common theme here. I think this was the same in our summer videos as well. A 7 out of 10 from Ashley. I'm sure as we go on in part 2 and part 3, there will be more disagreements between our ratings of drivers throughout. 7 out of 10 for Sebastian Vettel. It wasn't as bad a season as what some people might make out it to be, but it certainly wasn't a great season for Sebastian Vettel. Wasn't happy with the car. You can argue it wasn't really a car that suited him, and as soon as the more downforce came on the car in Singapore, his performances levels went up and he looked a lot more confident within the car, and his performances were a lot more confident, so that was good. But yes, losing out to Charles Leclerc in the World Drivers' Championship wasn't the best result for him. Vettel, the spins, the mistakes were too much. It could have been lower, but also he did secure that impressive win in Singapore. He was driving a very good race in Sochi before he retired, and in the first half of the season he was pretty consistent, getting podium finishes for the Ferrari as well. So not his best season, but not a truly awful season as well. So a 7 out of 10 for Sebastian Vettel. In regards to Ferrari as a whole, and we do differ on this one because I'm very harsh on Ferrari. It's a 4 out of 10 for me, and Ash gave them a 6 out of 10. 4 out of 10, why? Too harsh? I don't think so. Their strategy calls have been terrible throughout, that it kind of became a sad joke that you would be getting to Sunday, you would see Ferrari do well on the qualifying, and then you would go, but something's going to go wrong on the race, and inevitably it did, whether that be collisions or kind of disputes between drivers, mix up in strategy calls, or just the car not being able to perform in comparison to its competitors. It hasn't been overall a great car and a great season for Ferrari as a whole. Strategy, for me, they need to replace him. The strategy calls, yeah, have just been, compared to Red Bull and Mercedes, has not been on it, and it's cost them points this year, and it has been a difficult one to manage. And the drivers, talking about difficult to manage, they've not managed the Leclerc and Vettel situation well at all. It's still okay, I think they do get on, But yes, it could be one, if they don't improve the way that they handle those two together, it could be one that explodes next season, and then again another season where it will be a write-off. And going back to the car itself, has been a terrible one designed by Ferrari. They wanted to show off their engine power with a low drag kind of philosophy, and it has not paid off. If you are a top team, you need to build a car that can perform well at the majority of tracks on the F1 calendar. That is not what Ferrari did. It was only really came into play in the second half of the season, and that was mainly because of the aerodynamic package that they put onto the car that improved the downforce on it, improved the overall performance of the car. Yeah, disappointing for Ferrari, I believe. They certainly won't be happy with what they've accomplished this season. Yes, second in the Constructors' Championship, but yeah, for what they wanted to and how far they were off Mercedes, a real disappointing season. Our last team we will look at, and we'll start off with the last drivers we'll look at for this episode today, and that is Max Verstappen. He has had a fantastic season, and for me, a 9 out of 10. And Ash as well, I believe, also gave Max Verstappen a 9 out of 10. The reason why it was a 9 out of 10 for Max Verstappen, for me, he just drove the car in that first half of the season so well. Having brought on his performances from the end of last year into this year, he finished at the kind of season, mid-season break with 21 consecutive top 5 finishes, including at Silverstone, where Vettel obviously went into the rear to him, somehow making that car get to the end. And yes, a mightily impressive way how he's maximised performance out of the car, but not a 10 out of 10 because he did show still levels of immaturity in the second half of the season. Spa wasn't great from Max Verstappen, Monza wasn't great from Max Verstappen, and also for me was a little bit too ambitious in his overtake of Valtteri Bottas in Mexico that ultimately cost him a puncture and a spot further up the field within the race. But overall, it has been a fantastic season for Max Verstappen. I won't be too harsh on him. I've been incredibly impressed with how he has matured this year, and it's another learning curve. It's another year under his belt, and if Red Bull can build a car, if you watch the first F1 Worldwide podcast with me and the first guest Mark who came onto it, yeah, we don't think so, but we would love to be pleasantly surprised if Red Bull were able to give Max Verstappen a title contending car. His teammate, we're going to go with Alex Albon, as he is the one confirmed for 2020 in Red Bull next year, and obviously was the teammate who was with Max Verstappen in the second half of the year. For me, a 7 out of 10 for his overall performance, and a 7 out of 10 from Ashley. I promise we will disagree more next episode. But it was an impressive performance from Alex Albon in his rookie year to step up to one of the big 3 teams in Formula 1. He handled that pressure well. His best races were probably the race in China, where he went pit lane to points when he was still driving for Toro Rosso. And for Red Bull, his best drive was probably Brazil, where he was unfortunate to miss out on a podium that day. For me, Alex Albon, his free pass is gone though. He hasn't done anything exceptional within that Red Bull car yet, and he certainly needs to be pushing his teammate and the car more next season to really be earning the right for that car. So yes, Alex Albon, a good first rookie season, but it still needs to be more, and he's had a solid rookie season, but not an exceptional one, which we might think Lando Norris has had later on within it. Moving on finally to looking at Red Bull as a whole, and for me, again, 7 out of 10, and Ash, 7 out of 10. Cool. Very boring when we agree, but it does make it easier because it means that you probably weren't missing out on anything too much, as we generally would have said similar sort of things with similar sort of ratings. But Red Bull, they've had a solid year, a solid first year with Honda as their power unit partners. Made mistakes, probably didn't handle the Gasly situation as good as they could. Yes, the outcome of Alexander Albon performing better than Pierre Gasly has worked in their favour more, but in the way they handled it, they probably haven't been the kindest, and the way they've treated Gasly as a person for me hasn't sat right, and yeah, hasn't been great on that front. On track performances, they've done well. They haven't necessarily done as well on tracks that I'd expect them to dominate on. Obviously somewhere like Suzuka, it was obviously that early collision with Charles Leclerc which kind of halted their main hopes for the day. But Red Bull, a solid season, but certainly a season they need to look on and kick on next year and see if there is any chance that they can contend. But I feel with that Honda power unit, it will be a year too soon, and it will be more 2021 where Red Bull will be looking to challenge. There you go, guys. That is a roundup and the first of our season ratings video. That is Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull ticked off and done. We will have part 2 coming out tomorrow and part 3 coming out on Monday, where we will look at the rest of the grid and give their ratings for drivers and teams. Guys, hope you've enjoyed that today. Sorry Ash isn't here, but he will be back for the other 2 videos coming out later on in the week. If you have liked this video, guys, don't forget you can give it a thumbs up. And comment down below, do you agree, do you disagree with our ratings? We'd love to chat and debate things with you in the comments. How did you think the drivers did and the teams did this season out of the top 3? We'd love to hear from you guys, and make sure that if you are new around here to subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification so you can keep up to date with all our latest content and more videos just like this one, and keep up with the rest of the series coming out over the next 3 days. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.